Welcome back to Biography Central. Imagine sitting in the serene presence of a sage, grappling with life's profound questions, and receiving answers that dissolve the very fabric of your existence. Welcome to this enlightening chapter of Ramana Maharshi and the path of self-knowledge. Today, we explore the journeys of some of the Maharshi's early devotees, individuals who approached him with deep existential questions. Through their stories, we uncover not just their personal struggles, but also the profound teachings imparted by Ramana Maharshi. Each interaction offers us insights into the nature of self-inquiry, the essence of devotion, and the path to spiritual awakening. Join us as we navigate these experiences that illuminate the Maharshi's timeless philosophy, showing us that the journey to self-realization is as unique as each seeker. Chapter 10. Some early devotees. Although the doctrine Sri Bhagavan taught never varied, the way of teaching varies according to the character and understanding of the questioner. During the years on the hill, records were kept of the experiences of some of the devotees and of the expositions they received, and a few of these are given below. Indeed, it may be said that the experiences of his devotees constitute the biography of Sri Bhagavan, since he himself was established in the immutability beyond events and experiences. Sivaprakasam Pillai. Sivaprakasam Pillai was one of the intellectuals among the devotees. He had taken philosophy at the university and had already pondered over the mysteries of being. In 1900, he was appointed to a post in the Revenue Department in South Arcot District. 2 years later, his work took him to Thiruvannamalai, and he heard of the young Swami on the hill. He was captivated at the very first visit and became a devotee. He put 14 questions, and since the Swami was still maintaining silence, both questions and answers were in writing. The answer to the first question was written by the Swami on a slate and immediately copied out by Sivaprakasam Pillai. The other 13 were written out later from memory, but checked by Sri Bhagavan before being published. Sivaprakasam: Swami, who am I? And how is salvation to be attained? Bhagavan: by incessant inward inquiry, who am I? You will know yourself and thereby attain salvation. Sivaprakasam: who am I? Bhagavan: the real I or self is not the body, nor any of the 5 senses, nor the sense objects, nor the organs of action, nor the prana, breath, or vital force, nor the mind, nor even the deep sleep state where there is no cognizance of these. Sivaprakasam: if I am none of these, what else am I? Bhagavan: after rejecting each of these and saying, this I am not, that which alone remains is the I, and that is consciousness. Sivaprakasam: what is the nature of that consciousness? Bhagavan: it is Sat Chit Ananda, being consciousness bliss, in which there is not even the slightest trace of the I thought. This is also called Mauna, silence, or Atma, self. That is the only thing that is. If the trinity of world, ego, and God are considered as separate entities, they are mere illusions like the appearance of silver in mother of pearl. God, ego, and world are really Shiva Swarupa, the form of Shiva, or Atma Swarupa, the form of the spirit. Sivaprakasam: how are we to realize that real? Bhagavan: when the thing seen disappear, the true nature of the seer or subject appears. Sivaprakasam: is it not possible to realize that while still seeing external things? Bhagavan: no, because the seer and the seen are like the rope and the appearance of a serpent therein. Until you get rid of the appearance of a serpent, you cannot see that what exists is only the rope. Sivaprakasam: when will external objects vanish? Bhagavan: if the mind, which is the cause of all thoughts and activities, vanishes, external objects will also vanish. Sivaprakasam: what is the nature of the mind? Bhagavan: the mind is only thoughts. It is a form of energy. It manifests itself as the world. When the mind sinks into the self, then the self is realized. When the mind issues forth, the world appears, and the self is not realized. Sivaprakasam: how will the mind vanish? Bhagavan: only through the inquiry, who am I? Though this inquiry also is a mental operation, it destroys all mental operations, including itself, just as the stick with which the funeral pyre is stirred is itself reduced to ashes after the pyre and corpses have been burnt. Only then comes realization of the self. The I thought is destroyed, breath, and the other signs of vitality subside. The ego and the prana, breath or vital force, have a common source. Whatever you do, do without egoism. That is, without the feeling, I am doing this. When a man reaches that state, even his own wife will appear to him as the universal mother. True bhakti devotion is surrender of the ego to the self. Siva Prakasam. Are there no other ways of destroying the mind? Bhagwan. There is no other adequate method except self-inquiry. If the mind is lulled by other, means it stays quiet for a little while and then springs up again and resumes its former activity. Siva Prakasam. But when will all the instincts and tendencies, vasanas, such as that to self-preservation, be subdued in us? Bhagwan. The more you withdraw into the self, the more these tendencies wither, and finally they drop off. Siva Prakasam. Is it really possible to root out all these tendencies that have soaked into our minds through many births? Bhagwan. Never yield room in your mind for such doubts, but dive into the self with firm resolve. If the mind is constantly directed to the self, by this inquiry it is eventually dissolved and transformed into the self. When you feel any doubt, do not try to elucidate it, but to know who it is to whom the doubt occurs. Siva Prakasam. How long should one go on with this inquiry? Bhagwan. As long as there is the least trace of tendencies in your mind to cause thoughts. So long as the enemy occupy a citadel, they will keep on making sorties. If you kill each one as he comes out, the citadel will fall to you in the end. Similarly, each time a thought rears its head, crush it with this inquiry. To crush out all thoughts at their source is called vairagya, dispassion. So vichara, self-inquiry, continues to be necessary until the self is realized. What is required is continuous and uninterrupted remembrance of the self. Siva Prakasam. Is not this world and what takes place therein the result of God's will? And if so, why should God will thus? Bhagwan. God has no purpose. He is not bound by any action. The world's activities cannot affect him. Take the analogy of the sun. The sun rises without desire, purpose, or effort, but as soon as it rises, numerous activities take place on earth. The lens placed in its rays produces fire in its focus. The lotus bud opens. Water evaporates, and every living creature enters upon activity, maintains it, and finally drops it. But the sun is not affected by any such activity, as it merely acts according to its nature, by fixed laws, without any purpose, and is only a witness. So it is with God. Or take the analogy of space or ether. Earth, water, fire, and air are all in it, and have their modifications in it, yet none of these affects ether or space. It is the same with God. God has no desire or purpose in his acts of creation, maintenance, destruction, withdrawal, and salvation to which beings are subjected. As the beings reap the fruit of their actions in accordance with his laws, the responsibility is theirs, not God's. God is not bound by any actions. Sri Bhagwan saying that the true nature of him who sees appears only when the things seen disappear is not to be taken literally as stipulating unawareness of the physical world. That would be a state of formless trance or nirvikalpa samadhi. What is meant is that they cease to appear real and are seen as mere forms assumed by the self. This is made clear by the example of the rope and the serpent that follows. It is a traditional example, used also by Sri Shankara. A man sees a coiled rope in the dusk and mistakes it for a serpent and is therefore frightened. When day dawns, he sees that it was only a rope and that his fear was groundless. The reality of being is the rope. The illusion of a serpent that frightened him is the objective world. The statement that to crush out thoughts at their source is vairagya also requires elucidation. The meaning of vairagya is dispassion, detachment, equanimity. Siva Prakasam Pillai's question as to when the instincts and latent tendencies in a man could be subdued shows that it was vairagya that he felt the need to strive after. Sri Bhagwan was, in effect, telling him that vichara or self-inquiry is the shortest road to vairagya. Passion and attachment are in the mind. Therefore, when the mind is controlled, they are subdued, and that is vairagya. These answers were later expanded and arranged in book form as Who Am I? perhaps the most widely appreciated prose exposition by Sri Bhagwan. By 1910, Sivaprakasam Pillai already found government service irksome and an impediment to sadhana or spiritual quest. He was sufficiently well-to-do to lead the life of a householder without earning, so he resigned from service. 3 years later, he was faced with the real decision, whether his resignation meant withdrawal from the life of the world or whether he was merely renouncing what was irksome and retaining what was pleasant. His wife died, and he had to decide whether to marry again or to take up the life of a sadhu. He was still barely middle-aged, and there was a girl he was strongly attracted to. But then the question of money also arose if he was to marry again and to set up a new household. He shrank at first from asking Sri Bhagwan about such matters, perhaps realizing in his heart what the reply would be. So he tried to obtain an answer in another way. He wrote out 4 questions on a piece of paper. 1. What am I to do to escape all sorrows and cares on earth? 2. Shall I get married to the girl I am thinking of? 3. If not, why not? 4. If the marriage is to come off, how is the necessary money to be raised? With this, he proceeded to a temple of Wigneshwara, the aspect of God to which he had been wont to pray from childhood. He placed the paper before the idol and kept vigil all night, praying that the answer might appear written on the paper or that he might receive some sign or vision. Nothing happened, and he had now no other recourse but to approach the Swami. He went to Virupaksh cave, but still shrank from putting the questions. Day after day, he postponed doing so. Even though Sri Bhagwan never encouraged anyone to renounce home life, that did not mean that he would encourage one whom destiny itself had set free to go back deliberately for a second dose. Sivaprakasam Pillai gradually felt the answer borne in upon him from the sight of the Swami's own life in its serene purity, utterly indifferent to women, utterly unconcerned about money. The date he had fixed for his departure arrived with the questions still unasked. There were many people about that day, so that even if he had still wished to put his questions, he could not without making them public. He sat gazing on the Swami, and as he gazed, he suddenly beheld a halo of dazzling light about his head and a golden child emerging from his head and then re-entering. Was it a living reply that the progeny is not of the flesh, but of the spirit? A flood of ecstasy came over him. The strain of his long period of doubt and indecision was broken, and he sobbed in pure relief. It is an illustration of the great normality that prevailed around Sri Bhagwan, that when Sivaprakasam Pillai told the other devotees what had happened, some of them laughed or were incredulous, and some suspected that he had taken a drug. Although many instances of visions and unusual occurrences could be culled, they would be spread out very thinly over the 50 and more years of Sri Bhagwan's manifestation among us. Overcome with joy, Sivaprakasam Pillai gave up all thought of leaving that day. The next evening, as he sat before Sri Bhagwan, he again had a vision. This time Bhagwan's body shone like the morning sun, and round him a halo as of full moons. Then again he saw the entire body covered with sacred ashes and the eyes glowing with compassion. Again 2 days later he had a vision, this time as though the body of Sri Bhagwan was of pure crystal. He was overwhelmed and feared to leave lest the joy surging in his heart should cease. Eventually he returned to his village, the unasked questions answered. He spent the rest of his life in celibacy and austerity. All these experiences he described in a Tamil poem. He also wrote other poems in praise of Sri Bhagwan, some of which are still sung by the devotees. Not all comers understood the silent upadesha, instruction, of Sri Bhagwan. Natasha Mudliar did eventually, but it took him a long time. He was an elementary school teacher when he read Vivekananda and became fired with eagerness to renounce the world and find a guru. Friends told him of the Swami on Arunachala hill, but added that it was well nigh hopeless to seek upadesha, guidance, of him. Nevertheless, Mudliar decided to try. It was in 1918, and Sri Bhagwan was already at Skandashram. Mudliar went there and sat before him. But Sri Bhagwan remained silent, and Mudliar, not presuming to speak first, came away disappointed. Having failed in this attempt, he traveled about visiting other swamis, but found none in whom he felt the divine presence and to whom he could surrender. After 2 years' fruitless search, he wrote a long letter to Sri Bhagwan, imploring him not to be selfishly indifferent to the fate of longing souls and asking permission to come again, since his first visit had been ineffective. A month passed with no reply. Then he sent a registered letter, acknowledgement due, and this time he wrote, "However many rebirths I have to go through, I am determined to receive upadesha from you and you alone. So you will have to be reborn for that purpose if you give me up in this life as too unprepared or immature to receive your upadesha. I swear to this." A few days later, Sri Bhagwan appeared to him in a dream and said, "Do not think continually of me. You must first obtain the grace of God Maheshwara, the Lord of the Bull. First meditate on him and secure his grace. My help will follow as a matter of course." He had a picture in his house of God Maheshwara riding upon a bull, and he took this as a support for meditation. A few days later, he received an answer to his letter. The Maharshi does not reply to letters. You can come and see him in person. He wrote once more to make sure that the letter was written at Sri Bhagwan's bidding, and then set out for Thiruvannamalai. Following the course prescribed in his dream, he went first to the great temple in town, where he had darshan, enjoyed the presence of Lord Arunachaleshwar, and spent the night. A Brahmin whom he met there tried to dissuade him from his purpose. "Now listen, I have spent 16 years near Ramana Maharshi, trying in vain to obtain his anugraham grace. He is indifferent to everything. Even if you break your head there, he will not be interested to ask why. Since it is impossible to obtain his grace, there is no point in your visiting him." This is a remarkable illustration of the understanding that Sri Bhagwan required of his devotees. Where those whose hearts were open would find him more solicitous than a mother, and some would tremble with awe. One who judged by outward signs would find none. Natasha Mudliar was not the sort of man to be put off. Since he insisted on going, the other told him, "Anyhow, you can find out in this way whether you will have the good luck to obtain his grace. There is a Swami on the hill by the name of Sheshadri who mixes with none and generally drives away people who try to approach him. If you can obtain some mark of favor from him, it will be a good augury for success." Next morning, Mudliar set out with J.V. Subramanya Iyer, a colleague in his profession, in quest of the elusive Sheshadri Swami. After much searching, they saw him, and, to Mudliar's relief and astonishment, he himself approached them. Without needing to be told their errand, he addressed Mudliar, "My poor child, why are you grieved and anxious? What is jnana knowledge? After the mind rejects objects, one after another, as transient and unreal, that which survives this elimination is jnana. That is God. Everything is that, and that alone. It is folly to run hither and thither in the belief that jnana can be attained only by going to a hill or a cave. Go without fear." Thus did he give not his upadesha instruction, but that of Sri Bhagwan, in the very words Bhagwan might have used. Buoyed up by this propitious augury, they proceeded up the hillside to Skandashram. It was about noon when they arrived. For 5 or 6 hours Mudliar sat before Sri Bhagwan, and no word passed between them. Then the evening meal was ready, and Sri Bhagwan rose to go out. JVS Iyer said to him, "This is the man who wrote those letters." Sri Bhagwan thereupon looked fixedly at him, and then turned and went out, still without speaking. Month after month Mudliar came back for a day and sat there, mutely imploring, but Sri Bhagwan never spoke to him, nor did he presume to speak first. After a full year had elapsed in this way, he could endure it no longer, and at last he said, "I wish to learn and experience what your grace is, as people differ in their accounts of it." Sri Bhagwan replied, "I am always giving my grace. If you can't apprehend it, what am I to do?" Even now Mudliar did not understand the silent upadesha guidance. He was still confused as to what path he should follow. Shortly afterwards, Sri Bhagwan appeared to him in a dream and said, "Let your vision be unified and withdrawn from objects, both external and internal. Thus, as differences disappear, you will progress." Mudliar understood this to apply to his physical sight and replied, "This does not seem to me the right way. If such a superior person as you gives me advice like this, who will give me true advice?" However, Sri Bhagwan assured him that it was the right way. The next development Mudaliar himself has described. I followed this dream Upadesha for a while. Then I had another dream. This time Sri Bhagwan appeared to me while my father was standing by and asked, pointing to my father, "Who is this?" With some hesitation about the philosophical accuracy of the answer, I replied, "My father." Maharshi smiled at me significantly, and I added, "My answer is in accordance with common parlance, but not with philosophy, because I remembered that I was not the body." Maharshi drew me to him and placed his palm first on my head and then on my right breast, pressing his finger over the nipple. It was rather painful, but as it was his grace, I endured it quietly. I did not know then why he pressed the right breast instead of the left thus. Having failed to receive the silent initiation, he was given, even though in a dream, the initiation by touch. He was one of those whose eagerness and desire to make every effort drove them to the idea of renouncing home life and going forth as a penniless wanderer. As in other cases, Sri Bhagwan discouraged this. Just as you avoid the cares of home life when you are here, go home and try to be equally unconcerned and unaffected there. Mudaliar still lacked the full reliance and conviction of a disciple towards his guru, and he made the renunciation despite Sri Bhagwan's clear injunction. He found, as Sri Bhagwan had predicted, that the difficulties on his path grew greater, not less, and after a few years returned to his family and took up work again. After this, his devotion deepened. He composed Tamil poems in praise of Sri Bhagwan, and at last he received, more fully than most others, the verbal instructions that he had so longed for it was he who was the recipient of a large part of the expositions contained in a catechism of instruction, in which is most beautifully set forth the doctrine of the Guru and his grace. In this episode, we explored the life and teachings of Ramana Maharshi, shedding light on his unique approach to self-realization. In the next episode, we take a closer look at one of his most outstanding devotees, Ganapati Shastri. You won't want to miss this intimate portrait of a scholar turned seeker. Discover how his unwavering devotion to the Maharshi shaped his life and brought him profound insights. Tune in to learn about the deep connection between these two remarkable souls and how their legacies continue to inspire countless seekers on the path of self-knowledge. Thank you for listening till the end. Please subscribe, turn on the notifications, like, comment, and share with your friends. This will help more listeners to discover our channel and content.